Welcome to the 2014 Sustainability Forum. I have two purposes today. One is just to provide a brief welcome, and the other is to introduce our morning keynote speaker. So I hope today for you is going to be productive, and I hope you find it a very rewarding learning experience as well. I think events like the one today are the things that really help us continue to build on what I think is a strong culture of sustainability. And so again, thanks for being here. Also really appropriate to have an event like this in this type of facility. We could probably do a whole day just around the cool and sustainable features of this particular building. But this building also offers a unique place, a unique space, if you will, on campus for interdisciplinary thinking, which is also very crucial, of course, to sustainability efforts. I can tell you from the outset of our sustainability initiative, we've had ambitious goals. You've heard some of the progress that we've made, and we should feel very proud about that, but at the same time not rest on those laurels. We recognize there's lots of challenges that lie in front of us. As part of our initiative, we've tried to focus on integrating teaching and learning, research with campus operations. We think that's a fairly unique approach across the country, and one that really sets us apart from our peers, and I think gives us the best opportunity to really have the maximum impact and benefit to creating a truly sustainable institution. I can't think of another university that has deeper roots in sustainability than ours. It's important because of that, I think, to reflect on our past and to celebrate that and to recognize that. But it's we also need to recognize that it stands at the heart of our present and our future as well. And that, again, that there's so much work that's still yet in front of us. I think that we need to recognize that there's a strong commitment to this, that this is, again, one of our key strategic priorities for the institution. And again, I can't think of a better topic to have today that's drawing so much interest from experts and people just interested in learning across the campus. As I took a look at the presenters for today, it's a very, very impressive list of presenters. I think forums like this, again, are ones that help us build bridges across institutions and really helps us make the connections we need to make if we're going to have the impact on sustainability that we hope to have. I'm really pleased that there's so many members of our campus community and the broader community that are here with us, and those external partners are really important to our success. And one of those partners is, in fact, our keynote speaker here today, a man that's, I think, worked tirelessly on behalf of the state of Wisconsin and really made a lasting impact on the state, without a doubt. Ben Brancel has been serving as the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection since 2011. He served in the state legislature from 1986 to 1987, and in the final year serving as Speaker of the Assembly. At that point, he was appointed Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection and served in that capacity into 2003. Sandwiched in between those appointments, he actually was one of us for a period of time, working at the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences as a federal liaison. He's also a proud UW-Platteville pioneer and alum, so which is okay. That's okay. So why don't we at least welcome him and give him a really nice, warm Wisconsin Badger welcome.
Thanks, Carol. Well, good morning to all of you. So, one of the first questions asked today is where you're from. How many are outside of Dane County? Okay, I have to be a little bit careful with my remarks. Frank Kustra was the individual that approached and asked if I would be interested in participating in this, and I said absolutely. I would enjoy coming here. Some of you may not give Frank the same comments when I leave, but I do appreciate him inviting me to this event. So, where to start? For those that have to apply for credits, you might want to deduct my time from your credit. And what I told Frank was, you may not be happy with me when I walk away, but I certainly will give you something to think about. So the first thing I'm going to do is disagree strongly with Rob's comments. The debate on climate change is not over. If it is over, then we are a long ways from suggesting to others how they impact climate. So what I want you to do when you travel outside of Dane County, when you go up north, you walk in and you ask somebody, what did they do today to affect climate change? I want to hear the answer. I'm not sure you'll get any, because I think one of the answers will be, I have no idea. They don't put it in that perspective, which means we have not fully educated the citizenry, which means you have a challenge ahead. So one of the first questions I would ask this audience, in your areas, and this is what the governor is on me all the time about, and it gets to be old, they want a matrix. They want a matrix of my success. They want a matrix of where I'm going. They want a matrix of everything in my life in government, a matrix, so that when I get all said and done, I can say, this is where I was yesterday, this is where I am today, this is what I accomplished in the interim, and these are how I accomplished it. And so there are different perspectives in sustainability. I believe the University of Wisconsin has done a wonderful job of taking on the challenge of making this campus a premier shining star of all that can be engaged in order to affect sustainability. Then I want to tell you a little story about one of your professors that was way up north. I had no idea he was going to be there. I got invited to a meeting, an annual meeting of this group. I didn't know who they were. I didn't have any idea of the audience. It was way up in north of Medford, Park Falls area, and this professor was there specifically invited because of his work in soils and sustainability. He got half of his speech done, and the rest was argument. Argument from the audience that he was not understanding what he was talking about. So many people come to the table with their own concepts. And here was a scientist who deals in soils on a daily basis. I have a great deal, because I worked with him when I was in the university structure, I have a great deal of sympathy for him in taking that challenge forward. But he's a marvelous man who understands the topics and works tirelessly to find the answers to questions that are posed. If I do this, then what? If I do that, then what is the impact? And he's very good at it, very good at it. But translating that into an informational forum to people that are doubters is a challenge. So, to let you know, on our farm, we don't ignore these topics. I believe my wife started washing out tin cups way before recycling was even thought about as a term. There is very, very, very little that leaves our farm. All of the metals on our farm go to a recycling center. Our food scraps from the table, we purchase pigs. It goes through pigs, so we even reuse food scraps. And we do those things because there's merit in what we do, not because we have an ultimate goal. So your subtitle here is Climate Change in Wisconsin. Where do we go from here? Where are you at? Can you honestly tell me where you are at when you discuss the entire realm of climate change? Now, I'm not sure what Paul Mitchell will tell you from the survey that he did. I didn't call him and say, Paul, what was your findings in your survey and stuff, because I'm not sure the entire audience, how he performed it, and I believe that whatever the survey says is probably fairly adequate for the audience that he surveyed. But what I will tell you is, you lost the farming community. When the whole issue was started out with a warming of a climate, farmers that have spent 40 days in wind chills below zero have a hard time translating that into a scientific evaluation of climate change in their own personal life. And for many, and I'm just telling you, and this is not me, I'm just telling you what I hear, going to organizations, events, activities, a of a group of people who manage the majority of the lands in this state is that they think that because climate warming didn't catch, we'll try a new title, call it climate change. So they see it as the same audience with the same objectives, and it didn't work, so we'll try it again a different way. So one of the things you have to do is convince them that sustainability, climate change, is real in a scientific basis in their world. Not in your world, not in the science that's being created in the classroom and in the research centers, but in their world. Do they know it's changing? Yes, they know it's changing. How many know 30s, 50s, 88, and 12? What do they all have in common? Drought. Absolutely, drought. See, the 30s, that was my grandpa. 50s, that was my dad. 88, that was mine. 12, that was my son's. We have all faced, each one of our generations, a horrendous challenge in some years with trying to source enough food for our animals because of drought. So it's happened generation after generation after generation. So don't tell me that this is new. Tell me that it is, and we all know it is. Now, when we had, what did they call them this year? Polar vortex. They call it polar vortex. Well, I can tell you in the late 70s, they didn't call it that. They called it an Alberta clipper. That's what it was then. And the reason I know is I was in a silo chute at 90 degrees below zero wind chills trying to clear out the silage that was frozen, and I froze both my feet. So I had experienced that. So when you tell somebody this has never happened before, it is not a very accurate statement. It may be in our memory it's never happened before, but it has. So how do we impact these volatile weather patterns, and how do we deal with volatile weather patterns? And how do we mitigate, as Rob said, how do you mitigate the challenges that are in front of you? I'm not here to give you the answers. I'm only raising all of the questions that I believe you'll be challenged with as you move forward. Now, to a farmer, what is sustainability? First question, sustainability, I can afford it. That's the first question. Can I afford it? The question is then, can I afford it over and over again? Is it a repeatable pattern that I can continue to do? That's sustainable. The next one is, does this repeated pattern help me to improve my life, the life of my family, and my farming operation, or is it a diminishing return? So that I can repeat it and I'm okay for a while, but then it diminishes. And the reason I make that statement is my son and daughter-in-law are the 6th generation on our farm. And if my great-great-grandfather hadn't started out thinking about maintaining the farm in a pattern that can be used by the next generation, I'd be in serious trouble. Very serious trouble. So it's the cost, repeatable patterns, and that a continuation of benefit to the farm, the family, and to myself. Those are sustainability questions. That's how they focus it. So when you get to issues of sustainability and environmental impact, and you start looking at items like phosphorus and nitrogen, that's how you can get to them. You can't get through them through climate change till you get there with their knowledge base getting up to where this room is at. So you focus on items like phosphorus and nitrogen. Can I plant crops that take less phosphorus, which costs me less money? Can I plant crops and buy less nitrogen and get the same results? Can I change the methodology of application so that I can reduce the volume, get greater utilization, and with that, a result that is satisfactory to maintain the farm and its integrity into the future. And that they're doing. So if you go historically to the state of Wisconsin, it was a wheat state. Totally wheat everywhere. Two things impacted it. Two. One was disease and one was weather. So the disease was rust, and it wiped out huge acreage of wheat, and the other one was the environment, where continually planting the same item without replenishing nutrients into the soil get you a diminishing return. So the solution in William Hord's head was, we don't move a lot of artificial fertilizers, so let's get natural fertilizer to replenish the nutrients of our soils. So then that means we have to have a few animals, and we think with the type of soils we have, forages can be produced to feed the dairy cow, generate income for the farm, take the manure from the cow, because he understood manure is extremely valuable, because the wheat industry had taught him that. And then take the manure and apply it as a nutrient base for the soils and put it on. Now what's interesting is we all panic over manure. We panic. We're panicking all the time over the quantity of manure and how it's applied and stuff. And I will argue with you that today's application of manure is far superior than the old days. Far superior. Many of the soil tests you get where nutrient values are way too high for what the soil capacity is comes because of the type of technology we had in that daytime, like the 1950s and 60s, and I can tell you that. We were a little unique. My dad was one of the first, what I call nutrient management planners. He graduated from short course here in Madison. He went home, he created a spiral-bound notebook. As a kid, I thought it was neat, so he allowed me to draw the fields out. So every year there's a set of fields. They're all numbered the same way every year, so there's a pattern in the field design, in the numbers and stuff. And then he would include in there, we applied manure so that field was shaded. We applied starter fertilizers, the quantity was recorded. We put in oats, that was recorded, and the date was recorded. We put in corn. So every year there was a pattern. His theory was, you have to move crops around to get the greatest benefit. Well, that was rotational cropping. Today, that's what we call it. You also didn't apply manure to the same field all the time everywhere, because then you oversupplied some and undersupplied others. So every year we had, and I hated those fields at the far end. Oh. That little bitty 300 International tractor with no windshield on it at a day like today, because we hauled every day. And it was over a half a mile away to that far field. More than one day when I got home, I didn't even take the car to the tractor to the shed. I just jumped off of it, ran in, and threw my clothes off and crawled up by the registers so I could thaw out. But some fathers didn't challenge their sons to do that. So every winter, for 6 months, they applied the nutrient to the same fields right around the barns, over and over and over again. So it was the university's education of my father that helped him to understand nutrient distribution on the farm. And so some people didn't get that education. And so when you go to the soil tests in their farm today, they will show soils that are in depletion because they were further away from the barns, and all the soils up by the barns are too high. So one of the things I have suggested to DNR is you don't want to have a nutrient reduction strategy, you want to have a nutrient management strategy. That if all you do is tell people to reduce, someday you're going to have to put something on the soil or we'll be back in the wheat rotation. And then they're going to say, well, you've been telling me to reduce for years. What do you mean I'm supposed to put something on it? It's not jiving here. So it's really management. It's management of the nutrients, management of the product, and management of your operations. And I think that's where the long road to understanding sustainability leads you. Just a couple of numbers that I'll give you. At one time, this state had 2.5 million pigs in it. Today, we have 305,000. At one time, we had 2.5 million dairy cows in this state. With our latest statistics, what we have is 1.27. Half. Pigs are really diminished. In fact, I told the Pork Association, if you ever get 2.5 million pigs around here, I don't want to be Secretary of Ag because I can hear the screaming right now of the manure problem. But it's how we manage our resources, not what we have in total resources, but how we manage them. So as I mentioned, phosphorus and nitrogen are a way to enter the realm of agriculture and work with them to understand management of those resources. And if you do it correctly, you know what happens? Climate changes. And it changes without focusing on the climate change, but focusing on all of the attributes that impact and affect the climate change. Well, the University of Wisconsin not too long ago received a grant. It was $9.9 million, and it was a grant from the USDA to focus on sustainability of our dairy system here in the state. Matt O'Rourke, which is a professor here on campus, is the project manager. And he is supposed to look at everything that deals with the dairy animal and the environment and come up with concepts, whether it's feeding concepts, building concepts, management on the landscape concepts, and what to do with the animal in severe environmental situations like we have this winter with the cold weather. And that will be a report that is going to be anxiously awaited by many, not just here, all over the U.S. They are expecting that Wisconsin will lead the challenge along with partnering with other universities to answer some of the questions that we all have. One of the things that your new president, Ray Cross, has conversed with me about for a couple of years. Ray said, I need some help, Ben. I have people in my extension that are pointing fingers at somebody, and other people are pointing fingers at others. And I said, what you have to do, Ray, is refocus the energies of those people and quit trying to figure out who's to blame and try to figure out what is it that we can improve on. And I will maintain that research focused on water utilization will have the greatest benefit for everyone than trying to figure out who's using too much water today because it's impacting X. That if the energy is refocused on water utilization, in the long run, we'll all have barely enough to use. So, there has to be research on car washes. How to minimize the use of water to car wash. How to minimize the use of water in the dairy milking systems. How to minimize the use in irrigation. How to minimize the use of lawn sprinkling applications of water. No, I never irrigate my lawn. I don't fertilize it, because I don't want to have to spend enough time out there mowing it and then try to figure out what to do with the grass. Unless, of course, if my grandson decided to have rabbits as a 4-H hobby, then maybe I could harvest grass. But beyond me, it's an aesthetics thing. You tell me what a well-groomed grass accomplishes. It doesn't provide food to people. It doesn't provide fiber. It doesn't provide an environment that improves your living unless your kids are running around on it and you don't want them to get hurt falling on hard items. So there are some things that we generally accept in our own lifestyles that have an impact on what takes place in the environment. Let me tell you a little story, and this is really dangerous because you'll grab onto it and say he's right and beat me over the head with it. I was in the Capitol, and we were having a major discussion on BGH or BST, whatever you want to call it, the bovine somatotropin that was used to increase milk production in cows. And the one side was telling me that every cow's going to die. It's terrible. It's going to ruin our lives. It's a medical madness. It's bad. And the other side said, it's the only thing that I'll be able to do to keep enough milk production to earn enough money to stay farming for a long period of time. You know what? Neither side was right. It's somewhere in the middle. Truth is somewhere in the middle. It wasn't going to save anybody's farm, and it wasn't going to kill anybody. The truth was just plain in the middle, but we in the legislature, we get excited and we start arguing on the extremes. But I went into the office where all of the reporters are in there, reporters from Milwaukee, around the state, Janesville, Madison, and I said, there's a new technology. It's really bad. I think it's going to be the next argument. It kills people. It pollutes the air. People are losing jobs. I mean, they lose jobs with the use of this item. It's new technology. Oh, what is it? What is it? I said, well, you know, a lot of harness makers of horses are going to be out of business, and nobody's going to be building harnesses and wagons, except maybe the Amish. What are you talking about? Tractors. Terrible technology. I mean, just think about it. One guy is running over thousands of acres of land now in a few hours. And it used to take one man to work hard all summer to do about 80 acres. And the impact. But it translates to the urban society. You can say all you want about mass transit, but there are a lot of people that have cars that don't want to ever give them up. And it isn't the car that pollutes through gas, it's the car that uses energy. So any kind of car you have impacts the environment. Any kind. Electric cars. Somebody has to produce that electricity, which means they have to explore for nitrogen gas, which means they have to transport nitrogen gas, which means they have to burn it, which means you have to create electricity so you can power your electric car. So, truth be told, there's a lot of things that impact the environment in our lives. So, where do I leave you with that? Start working on the areas where you have what are possibilities. Focus your research on long-term solutions. If you focus your research on who's at fault, then that's all you'll find out. Who is at fault? And will they change what they're doing if the research is not available to take them in a direction that helps them improve what they're doing? So it's focused on research. A very, very detailed game plan on informing the general public that is skeptical. This forum is wonderful because you get a chance to interact with each other and get clarity on what you're all doing, what all parts of your segment are doing. But you really have to think about what are the public thinking and how do I reach the public and what is our game plan, and create a matrix so that with that matrix you can track yourself and track your failures and track your successes. And I think that will benefit you in the longest run. And those are some of the comments that I thought I would bring you today and leave some time open to answer questions if you have any. If not, I hope you have a great day. I hope it is a very, very successful event. I intend to stay through the panel so I can learn all the mistakes I made in my comments and modify my speech next time I am asked to give one. So thank you very much for having me. Yes.
Could you say a few words about the interaction of Wisconsin farms and farmland with energy and crops for energy and the production of energy your biological needs in
Sure.
Wisconsin?
Sure. A lot of comments have been centered around ethanol and how bad ethanol is because it takes land away from food production and puts it into energy production. I would suggest in the last 3 years we've learned that there's more involved in ethanol and the impact on prices, which generates food costs, because in 12 prices drove it up. 12 was a drought year. We didn't have the quantity and it drove it up. Right now, with the crop that we yield last year in 2013, prices are estimated this year to be at $3.90 a bushel. That doesn't mean anything to you, but what it means to a farmer is for every bushel of corn they produce, they will lose 20 cents. It will be a lost year. We still have ethanol. It's still there. If we can be successful at finding cellulosic production of energy, the farmers will be the first ones at the table thrilled with the concept and with the technology. And I will tell you why. Seed production today is so valuable and is producing so much grain on the land. There's a lot of what we call fodder. That's the plant that's left after you harvest the ear. And it's getting to the point we can't hardly get it into the soil and till it into the soil, so it's becoming a nuisance. And in fact, some of the really big companies that people don't like ADM and Monsanto and others, have been challenged by the farmers saying, you either have to reduce the size of the plant so we have less fodder, or you have to find a different means of using that product. So there's some new resources that are interested now in the technology of cellulosic production of ethanol. And if it comes, the farmers will be the first to adopt it because it solves a problem for them personally. It's a problem. I know that the university has done an extensive amount of research on different grasses that can be harvested. The biggest challenge we have with grass production is harvesting and transportation. Because you see, I can take a lot of kernel of corn that's very dense, pile it into a truck at about 900 bushels, or about 80,000 pounds of weight, and I can move it 20 miles, 30 miles, 40 miles. If you harvest grass from the same quantity of area, the texture of the grass is so light, we're moving 40,000 pounds of material instead of 80 over the same distance using the same space of transportation. So harvesting is going to have to be a technology developed and packaging for grasses if they're really going to be viable in the long term. It sounds wonderful. It works when you harvest it by hand. You run it through the research system, and the results of what you produce with it is a very, very good result. The problem is, and nobody thinks about this, it's the transportation from where it's grown to where it'll be utilized, and how do we package it to get it there with transportation costs the way they are and the quantity it'll take to move. So somebody's going to have to do research on repackaging grasses so that we can move them longer distances. So, yes.
Yes, your Alberta clipper from some years back is now called the polar vortex. We've all experienced extreme weather at some point in our life. I think most of us would agree that we're experiencing more of it more frequently than we have in past generations. And if you think about the spring a few years back, we're running around in our t-shirts, it's 90 degrees. And then you look at this spring, and you ask the farmer, what are you going to plant? And how are you going to prepare when there's no long-term predictability on whether it's going to be wet or dry or excessively drought or excessively anything. There's just so much variability.
Yep.
Polar vortex, shifting weather patterns, not just here, but all around the world. So when we talk about that dialogue, where you're taking the science
So several comments on that. One is you have to convince the farmer to use the type of tillage system that takes the least amount of time. When you get into a really wet condition and you are not in the fields, you're not in the fields. If you don't change your tillage methodologies, it takes you this much time to till the ground in order to plant. If you have a wet spring, it moves it later into the year and you're still planting. If you can shorten up the tillage process, which means you start talking about soil preparations, and that's all a benefit to the environment when you get there. But you're not doing it because of the environment, you're doing it because it's time crunch time to get the seeds in. You're going to get the same success and the same results. The other one is that the seed producing systems are being challenged, and they're being told by farmers because of the volatility in the weather patterns, and we don't know whether it's going to be wet or dry. Get us seeds that will produce a root system to hold it when it's wet, and will use little moisture later on, or less moisture, or use drought-resistant seeds in order that when you get those volatile things, you still have a plant that can sustain itself through the system. What I used to hate is a dry spring, a wet spring and a dry summer. That's bad. That's really bad, because a wet spring, it doesn't set the roots, it doesn't have to. It's right there to grab the moisture. So it's not used as an anchoring device on the plant. It's used as a moisture gathering, so it's short. Then you come to a dry year, it can't get to the moisture because the roots are too short, and when the wind comes, it tips the plants over and destroys some of your crop. So there's genetic things that we have to manage, but there's also just mechanical tillage and other kinds of technologies that have to be advanced. And you're right. That has to take place for us to be successful in the long run to produce food in this state and in this country. So thank you much. I'm sorry I was told that's my last question. I'm out of time. I've ruined all of your lives in the time I've been here.